I've been a nurse practitioner for over 8 years. And today I'm going to tell you what I wish someone had told me before I became a nurse practitioner. And it would have saved me so much heartache, so much headache, and helped me prevent me from thinking I made a mistake in my career and my life. What that means for you is that you don't have to wake up dreading the alarm clock. You don't have to look at your patient's schedule for the day and feel overwhelmed and inadequate. And you don't have to reflect on your career decision, wondering, questioning your decision, and wondering if you're built for this, wondering if you made the right decision for your future and your life. Because believe me, I felt all those things. For those of you who are new here, hi, my name is Nicole. I am a rheumatology nurse practitioner, and I help nurse practitioners and other medical providers find happiness in healthcare and meaningfully connect with their patient in 60 seconds or less. Now, the first thing that I wish someone had told me as a nurse practitioner is that this the learning never stops. The learning never stops. In school, traditionally, you study to pass an exam, to get good grades, to graduate, to get to your next goal. There's actually an end goal to the learning. Like you can see, like on your calendar, like, okay, I'm going to study for this many months and I'll finish on this date. The exam is this date, that you can see the end result. You can see the end of the path. As a nurse practitioner, practicing medicine, working in healthcare, or there is no end to the learning. There is no end to the learning. In fact, the biggest exam you will ever have as a nurse practitioner is evaluating a patient and figuring out what they have, where are their symptoms coming from, what's causing their symptoms. And it's sort of scary when you graduate school. You no longer have your preceptors, your teachers, your professors to depend on. And as a nurse practitioner, you can still ask questions to your supervising physicians 100%. But there are so many days when I am the only provider, the only medical provider on site that day at the clinic, and I have to figure out things on my own in the moment. And whether it's I'm referencing books, studies, reading the latest guidelines on certain diseases and medications. You know, my first few years as a nurse practitioner, I spent so many late nights staying up late at work because I was going over my patient charts, my notes, reviewing guidelines. Did I do things correctly? I would be calling patients at 7, 8 o'clock at night to correct them on things that I told them or I did for them that day earlier in the visit. And no one warns me that I would still feel like I was in school in my first few years practicing as a nurse practitioner. And to be honest, this challenge, now looking back at it, this challenge is actually good for you. Forcing yourself to constantly learn, it teaches you. It teaches you to be adaptable and to be flexible, to learn new things and to stay updated on things because things are always changing. In fact, a couple weeks ago, I was at a drug presentation dinner for a new medication that we use in rheumatic autoimmune diseases. And it was very enlightening. I met with this rheumatologist from across the country, and she shared so much insight, so much knowledge. She had been practicing for like decades. So I could learn so much from her. And I felt like leaving that night, I learned a lot more from her experience and all her wisdom than my several years practicing. Like I feel like I had like gone a leap, like what am I trying to say? I jumped like light years ahead in terms of experience because I got to network with her, learn from her, listen to her, and talk with her. And I learned that also there are more medications for rheumatic diseases today than there were when I was in school or when I became a nurse practitioner. Like, it's wild. My training from NP school is officially stale. It's officially stale. Albert Einstein, he once said, once you stop learning, you start dying. It's a little morbid, but when you think about it, it is very true. You have to constantly stimulate your brain. You have to constantly learn new things in order to keep moving forward, to keep growing. It's kind of like investing money in your 401k or the stock market. Like if you have a dollar, then you have a dollar today, the day of this recording, like, 2025. In 6 months, in a year, if you don't put that dollar bill in the stock market, in a interest yield account, then that dollar bill is stale because it's worth less money than it was the day of this recording. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. It's kind of like, inflation. So your brain has to constantly be stimulated and learning new things, staying updated on guidelines and new studies and data. And it's sort of uncomfortable to feel like you don't know everything, right? It's totally uncomfortable, and that's normal. It's normal to feel uncomfortable because even in healthcare, we don't know everything. I treat autoimmune rheumatic diseases. We don't know everything. That's why we don't have a cure for them. That's why I tell patients, like, I wish we had a cure. Maybe in 100 years, 200 years, a couple generations in the future, we will have a cure. But as of right now, we don't know everything. And I think that's why I really struggled in my first few years as a nurse practitioner in practice. I thought that school was supposed to prepare me for everything in my career as a nurse practitioner. But school only got me through the basics, the bare fundamental basics. The most important thing that school taught me as well was to get used to feeling uncomfortable every day. I was always anxious in class, in school, if I got called on to answer a question, to which a lot of times I didn't know the answer. And that feeling of being uncomfortable, it doesn't exactly go away. It doesn't go away all the time. And so you should always be okay with feeling uncomfortable. I want you to start normalizing that. You should always be asking questions. Even my supervising physicians ask each other questions. And so I want to encourage you and support you and telling you that it is okay that you feel uncomfortable because I do too. Feeling uncomfortable and open to constantly learning is now my new norm. And I want it to be the first thing. I wish it was the first thing that someone told me. All right. The second thing that I wish someone told me as a nurse practitioner is that nurse practitioners are pioneers. Nurse practitioners are pioneers. I want to explain. So, nurse practitioner, the role of the nurse practitioner was started around 1965. It was the nurse practitioner role was created in 1965 by a nurse, Loretta Ford, and Dr. Henry Silver at the University of Colorado to increase access to pediatric care. That's about 60 years ago to now 2025. 60 years ago. Let me ask you this. How long have doctors been around? Tens of thousands of years. I mean, if you Google this, if you really look, no one really knows exactly when doctors started, but the Hippocratic Oath, the very famous Hippocratic Oath that every physician swears under during med school, do no harm. It was originally written sometime between 500 to 300 BC. If you do the math, that's like 2,520 years ago. 2,520 years ago. So if we do the math, okay, 60 years of the nurse practitioner role divided by 2,520 years of the physicians of being around, nurse practitioners have been around for only 2%. 2% compared to how long doctors have been around. This is why nurse practitioners are pioneers. Nurse practitioners are pioneers. The dictionary definition of the pioneer, it's a person or group that originates or helps to open up a new line of thought or activity or a new method or technical development. So, as a pioneer, you are something that's new to the horizon, new to the industry, new to the landscape, new to other people. People have to learn to change their beliefs and their behaviors to adapt to you. So, it is normal for people to question you. As a pioneer, it is normal for patients, for even our colleagues to question us. And here's the real kicker. As a pioneer, it is normal to question yourself. It is very normal for you to question yourself, and it's normal for other people to question you. I've been practicing as a nurse practitioner for over 8 years, and I still to this day get patients asking to see the supervising physician over myself. And, change is really hard for anyone to adapt to. And I'm going to give you a real life example of, demonstrating this, how it kind of works out. So this is called the law of diffusion of innovation. So I'm going to draw a bell curve here. All right. So I'm going to divide this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's divide here, here, in half. Okay. So this bell curve represents mass market success for any new business, any new product on the market. Let's use the Apple iPhone as an example. Everyone now in 2025 knows what the Apple iPhone is, right? We all know what it is. The Apple iPhone. What year did the iPhone come out? 2007. June 2007, Steve Jobs stepped out on stage and changed the world by announcing the brand new Apple iPhone. Do you know how many people bought the Apple iPhone in 2007? 1.4 million people bought the Apple iPhone the first year it came out. 1.4 million. Now, how many people today in this year, 2025, how many people own an Apple iPhone? It's more than 1.4 million, I'll tell you that. 1.4 billion people own an iPhone today. Huge market, huge bigger part of the market that the iPhone has grown in the last less than 2 decades. So, what does this have to do with the law of innovation of diffusion? Law of diffusion of innovation. I'm going to explain this. So, when a product comes out on the market for the first time, you have your innovators, who is about 2.5% of the market. So, 2.5%. Sorry, I'm just checking that you can see this. If you're listening to the podcast, I highly recommend you watch the YouTube video because it's going to be super helpful seeing the visual. So, innovators, 2.5%. We have our early adopters, which is about 13.5%. And then in the middle of the bell curve, we have our early majority, which is about 34%. Then we have our late majority, 34%. And then we got the end, our laggards, the 16%. So what this represents is when a product comes out in the market, for example, the Apple iPhone for the first time ever, most people are not going to buy something that's brand new on the market. There's no reviews. There's no one's ever had it before. We don't have a guarantee it'll work. We don't know how it'll work. It's like when you buy something on Amazon, you look at the reviews to see if it's other people think it's good, right? You're not going to be the guinea pig yourself. So when you have something that comes out on the market first time, the only people that buy into that are the innovators, about 2.5% of the market. Very small, little bit. But once those people kind of buy in, people start listening. Oh, good reviews. People like it. It's really efficient. It's working. Then we get into your early adopters. It starts reaching more of the market. And the law of diffusion of innovation tells us that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of a product, the iPhone, of a new role in healthcare, the nurse practitioner, you cannot achieve this until you have hit that 15 to 18%, which is about here. 15 to 18%. That is the tipping point for market penetration when the system tips and you start kind of really absorbing into that market. So the majority of people will not try something until someone has tried it first. Just like reading those Amazon reviews, just like people buying that iPhone. 1.4 billion of people are going to buy it, only a couple million in the beginning. And then now you have mass market. So now the Apple iPhone has mass market. Nurse practitioners only represent 2% of medical providers. Not medical providers. Nurse practitioners represent 2% of the length that physicians have been around. We're right here. We're in the very early stages. And so I really mean it when nurse practitioners are pioneers. I really mean it when I say this. We are just getting started. We are paving the way for the next generation and the next generation of nurse practitioners. And so, as a pioneer, I want you to remember it is normal for other people to question you, and it is normal to question yourself. All right. I want to encourage you to stay with it. All right. We are pioneers. All right. The third thing that I wish someone had told me as a nurse practitioner is that you are competing with patients doing online research on Dr. Google. On Google, no one warned me that despite learning all the studies, sacrificing so many years of my life to make people healthier, better, that people would still question me. In fact, my biggest competitor and your biggest competitor, it isn't your supervising physician, it isn't the doctors. Your biggest competitor is the internet. It's Dr. Google. The public internet came about in 1993. That's about 31, 32 years ago. The internet has completely changed the world, completely changed people's behavior. Information is now nearly accessible to everyone around the world. You can go on the internet and research just about anything. You can go on Wikipedia, you can go on, Joe Schmo's website, you can go on Medscape, you can go everywhere and just get information just like that. But that means the problem is that sometimes the information out there isn't the most accurate, which we all know. But the problem, and that means is that you are now presented with patients who come in and see you armed with information that they found from the internet, from a Facebook group, from an actual accurate study, or from some Joe Schmo's website, and about whether a medication is safe or whether someone had a bad experience with it and do not recommend it. And so as our world evolves with the internet, people evolve how they access information and how they are able to get information and learn things. You too must evolve to stay relevant as a nurse practitioner in today's modern era of medicine. And so that means your communication skills must evolve. How you interact with your patients, how you speak, the words you speak, how you communicate with your patient has to change and evolve. For example, this is a little example here. If you're a biology lover, like my husband is, in England, there is a moth called the peppered moth. And initially, they were very light colored, like very gray color, because they would match the light bark of the trees to hide from predators. But since the early 19th century, where there was soot everywhere from the Industrial Revolution, it transformed the environment. It covered the trees with much darker colors. These peppered moths would adapt and they actually change their coloring so that wings are darker to match the soot colored trees. And so as behavior changes, as people's behavior changes, our communication style must change and evolve as well. People often think that they know how to communicate because, hey, we've been saying words and we've been talking since we were 1 year old. But talking and communicating are way different. Communicating in a way that impacts people, that helps people make healthy decisions, having patients tell you, you're my favorite doctor, or I'd rather see you than the doctor. That's what fills you with a sense of purpose. That's what takes elevating your communication skills to a whole nother level. And if you're interested in learning how to meaningfully connect with your patient in 60 seconds or less, then I highly invite you to click the link below and join the next round of the masterclass that I'm hosting. All right, back to the video. Benjamin Franklin once said, for the best return on your money, pour your purse into your brain and pour your purse into your head. And those are the three things that I wish someone told me as a nurse practitioner, or before I became a nurse practitioner. I wish someone told me that the learning never stops, that you are a pioneer as a nurse practitioner. You are just getting this party started. So it's normal to question yourself or to have other people question you. And three, your biggest competitor is the internet. It is Google. It is Dr. Google. It is the patient's ability to go on the Facebook group at 2 a.m. looking up what someone had a bad reaction to a medication, and you have to come prepared to communicate against that. So I hope this episode was helpful. And if it was, you might like my other video. I'm going to post it actually probably right over here. And otherwise, I will see you all in the next episode.